then I will get us started. Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday, not Wednesday. And I'm delighted to be here with my colleague Stephen Howard to share this webinar with you. Let me introduce Stephen. Some of you know me, but let me introduce Stephen. Stephen Howard is the award-winning author of 26 leadership, business, professional, and personal development, decision-making, and societal change books. Did you get all that? He's here today to share insights from his most recent, I think it's your most recent book, Human Leadership, Mindsets, Skills, and Behaviors for Being a Successful People-Centric Leader. In awarding the book a gold medal, the Nonfiction Authors Association called Human Leadership a significant work with an important mission. Stephen was named one of the 2023 top 200 global biggest voices in leadership, in recognition of his thought-provoking and leading-edge thinking on leadership. He was named to the 2023 CREA list of top influential leaders for his thought leadership and writing. Humany is a word that Stephen has created comprising human, humanity, and harmony to emphasize the leading of people and the need for leaders to create workplaces of well-being and harmony. Stephen is well known and recognized for his international and multicultural perspective, having lived in the US for over 30 years, in Singapore for 21 years, in Australia for 12 years, and in Mexico City for 3 years. He currently resides in Phoenix, Arizona. Please welcome Stephen. For myself, for those of you who don't know me, I'll just say very briefly, I've been an HR practitioner and business leader for 45 plus years. I also have had the great opportunity to have lived overseas, spent 15 years in 6 different expat assignments: Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Malaysia, India, and Poland. And about 5 years ago, I left the corporate world to form my own consulting practice, and I'm based out of Groton, Connecticut. So without further introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen. To save bandwidth, I'm going to go off video. But Stephen, the show is yours.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome, everybody. Again, hope we have a wonderful Thursday. I want to talk to you about mindsets and mindsets that elevate performance. And that's one of the key topics that everyone's facing these days, is how to increase our performance in a world of uncertainty and change and constant chaos happening. How do we keep our people moving forward? So in doing that, I'll ask you, what is a mindset? And when we think about a mindset really is how you interpret what you see and what you experience. And keep in mind that that's what your employees are doing. They're interpreting your actions, your leadership's actions, the policies and procedures that you have as an organization. They interpret that by what they see and what they experience. Basically, it's your perspective, it's your thoughts. And I want to apply that really to leadership. So I'm going to share, here's my leadership mindset. I believe leadership is an art. Yes, there is some science behind leadership. There's certainly models that we use. There's tracking measurements that we use. But really, at the end of the day, leadership is an art. And how we apply leadership is an art. I think it's the art of achieving progress through the involvement and actions of others. By the way, you'll get a copy of these slides, so you don't have to take copious notes if you want. Haley will send out the slide deck later, the PDF of it. But notice what I say here, and this is where, again, your mindset really plays an important role. I don't talk about results. Leadership, to me, is not about achieving results. It's about achieving progress. Sometimes you'll achieve the results you set out to achieve. Other times you're going to fall short. Sometimes it's your fault as a leader or your team's fault. Sometimes it's things beyond your control. I mean, for instance, the tariff policies that are impacting people around the country and around the globe right now, and the constantly changing of the tariff policies. Those are beyond our controls. But I talk about achieving progress because what's important, if you don't hit your third quarter goals as a team leader, or if you don't hit your fourth quarter goals, you still want that team to be in a position to work well together in the first quarter of next year, in the second quarter of next year. And if you only focus on results and you burn your people out in the fourth quarter of this year to achieve your 2025 goals and objectives, and that team is so burned out and so frazzled and disorganized and discontented with each other, how do you think they're going to function in the first quarter next year? So I talk about it's about progress, and it's about getting other people involved in the actions of others. We can't do it all as leaders. So I define leader as anyone who directly or indirectly leads people. So that could be a supervisor, that could be a team leader, that could be a shift leader, anybody who leads people. So as we go through this today and afterwards, I really encourage you to think about, what is your leadership mindset? What does it mean to you to be a leader? And as HR professionals, I know many of you are, what does that mean for the people within your organization? What is their mindset around leadership? And I'm going to encourage you, based on my favorite philosopher, my favorite leadership philosopher, Yoda. You must unlearn what you've learned, because the way we led people or managed people in the 80s and 90s and first 20 years of this century, we can't do it the same way anymore. We have to unlearn many of the ways that we're leading people. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about this morning, is how to unlearn some of those things. I'm going to talk to you about the differences between managing and leading people, what our employees really need from their leaders in today's world, and why human leadership skills, the basis of my book, are what's required for sustained success. Not sustainable. I'm not talking about environmentalism here or anything else. I'm talking about sustained success, success that you can repeat and replicate quarter after quarter, year after year, with the same team in place. So here's a question for you. Is it your job to manage people? And I would encourage you to go back to the office this afternoon and ask your leadership people, is it their job to manage people? And I would suggest to you that managing people is a 1980s construct, and it no longer applies in today's world. Because quite frankly, no one wakes up and says, I cannot wait to be managed by my boss today. And I've never, ever heard anybody ever say, I can't wait to be micromanaged by my leader today. You know, we're not hiring people for their hands anymore. We're hiring them for their brains. We need to leverage their brains, utilize their brains. And people don't want to be managed. What they do want, they want to be led. They want to be motivated. They want to be trusted. Now, yes, you'll have 5, 6, 7% of your workforce, depending on the size of your company, who just want to come in, clock in, do their job, and not be bothered. But where do you want to put your focus as a leader? Do you want to put it on that 4, 5, 6, 7% of your workforce? Or do you want to spend your time encouraging, leading, motivating, and trusting the 93, 94, 95, or 96% of your workforce? Where do you want to put your effort? Where do you want to put your energy? And that's a mindset change, because too often we focus on those bad apples in the workplace and not enough on the good apples who are producing our results. People also want to be given opportunities to grow their skills and their decision-making capabilities. And they want to be involved in decisions, and not necessarily strategic decisions, not direct the way the company's going to go, but how they're going to implement what they can influence, what they're responsible for. How can they implement the changes that you're making as an organization? How can they implement your growth strategies rather than being told what to do and how to do something? People want and need to be coached, mentored, and empowered. These are the key skills now of leadership. And most importantly, I believe they need to be unshackled from directives. Tell them what needs to be done. Tell them what good looks like, what does success look like, but don't tell them how to do it. People don't want to be told how to accomplish their work. Let them figure it out. You've hired them because they have a brain. You've hired them for their cognitive skills. You've hired them for their decision-making skills. Let them utilize, leverage those skills. So it's a mindset change. And that mindset change is simply, you manage things, processes, policies, projects, procedures, but you lead people. So take that mindset change. Think about how differently your organization would be if every people leader in your organization had that attitude, that mindset that they're leading people. I'm going to take that a step further here in a minute too for you. Okay. So you lead human beings, not just people. You don't lead assets. You don't lead resources. You don't lead staff or workers or headcounts. You're leading human beings. And our top priority of leaders is to develop those people, to develop our human beings. So it's no longer about getting the most out of people. That's a Jack Welch managerial concept from the 1990s. And it worked. And, you know, when I was a leader in corporate America, that's exactly what I was paid to do, was to get the most out of our people. Well, I would suggest to you today that mindset change, this is one of those unlearn what you've learned practices, is to put the most into our people, develop our people, and then reap the rewards for doing so. Additionally, we now have, as leaders, post-pandemic, we are now responsible for the workplace well-being of our environment, reducing stress, reducing drama in the workplace. And we also have some responsibility for our employee wellness, their physical wellness, their mental wellness, and their emotional wellness. So as leaders, what we can do to create a harmonized workplace is now critical. And the more we do that, the more we're going to benefit, not only in terms of productivity, but also in terms of employee loyalty, innovation, creativity, and many other things. So I'll leave you, not leave you, but to leave this portion of the presentation with this thought. One of the greatest gifts we as leaders can give to any team member is to help them find and grow their talents. And if we find and grow their talents, particularly with the younger generation today, they will be more loyal. Yes, we're seeing a lack of loyalty in the marketplace today, without a doubt. But do our organizations really, are they worthy of employee loyalty? Not if we're not developing people. That's the number one concern of our younger generation. So what do people need from their leaders? What do employees need? And I'm going to change that with the next slide again, change your mindset. What do employees, what do humans, what do those humans in our workforce need from their leaders? I think Steve Cadigan summed it up best. Steve was LinkedIn's first CHRO. In his book, Workquake, he said, in a world of constant change and disruption, what people want more than anything else is to be in an environment of trust, working with people they trust. And unfortunately, research after research shows that there is a lack of trust in the workplace around the globe. And it's a two-way street. Our leaders, our managers don't trust their employees, and our employees don't trust their managers. They don't trust the organization. But this lack of trust by managers and by leaders in their employees has resulted in reduced inclusion, reduced productivity, innovation, creativity, and obviously in bottom line results. It's also increased employee churn in the workplace. Because if a leader is not trusted by the people they lead, quite frankly, nothing else they do matters. And trust comes from how you communicate as a leader. Are you open? Are you authentic? Are you vulnerable? Are you willing to say you don't know? You don't have all the answers. That's the kind of leadership we need in the workplace today. One of the things I advise the people I coach, particularly people who are taking over new teams or people who are joining new organizations, is to start all relationships on the basis of trust. I've seen too many leaders and managers go in and take over a team, be promoted within the organization, great individual contributors who are now promoted to a manager level. And they pull the team together and introduce themselves. And one of the first things they say is, here's how you earn my trust. I would advise that is no longer the right way to lead a department or a team. I would advise that the best thing to do is go into that team and say, I trust you. Here's how you lose my trust. You lie, you're dishonest, you sweep a mistake under the carpet, You don't come to me soon enough when something that you're handling is beyond your capability. That's what I'm here. I'm here to help you as your leader. You blame others. You take credit for other people's works. That's how you can lose my trust. But I trust you. And again, that's a huge different mindset change from the kind of leaders that we've had in the past. Because leaders who do not listen will eventually be surrounded by people unwilling to speak or contribute. And I mentioned a moment ago that communication is critical to building trust. Well, when we think about communicating as a leader, we often think about how do we communicate outwards? How do we get our message across? How do we walk the talk? But also we have to remember that we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. And if we listen twice as much as we speak, we'll be a lot better leader. And if we don't listen, people are eventually going to shut up and say, well, it's not worth my time. I'm not going to contribute. I'm going to use my brain power somewhere else. So the listening skill and the ability to ask good questions are 2 of the most important aspects of communicating as a leader in today's world. I also want to talk to you here about a culture of appreciation. And this may shock some of you, some of these statistics here, because they always shock me, even though I've presented these statistics, not this presentation, but these statistics many times, they still shock me. But understand that appreciation and gratitude are 2 of the most important levers that you have as a leader. But look at this, a 10-year study, 10 years of over 200,000 managers and employees. 79% of those who quit their jobs said they cited a lack of appreciation as one of the key reasons for leaving. And almost criminally, 65% reported they were not recognized even once by their leaders or supervisors over the past year. Over the past year. I love this quote from Mary Kay Ash. Well, sorry, I have one more step here for you. HubSpot, even more recently, this was actually last year, their research showed that 69% of employees said that they would work harder if their efforts were better recognized. So why aren't we recognizing people? And here's the whoops, sorry, I just went too far. There we go, I'm back on track. This lack of appreciation has been cited as one of the top contributing factors in nearly every research study that I've read into the causes of the Great Resignation and high employee turnover. So the Great Resignation may be over, although some research I'm reading today says the Great Resignation 2.0 is on its way, but we're still experiencing high employee turnover in the workplace, and that is likely to continue. So it's a mindset change. I advise people to recognize efforts and reward results. So often we wait until a project is finished. We wait until the job is over, and then we tell them what a good job they've done. If we're working on a project for 6 weeks or longer, I highly suggest that we need to recognize the efforts they're putting in at least every other week. Keep them motivated. Ask them if they're having any hurdles that we can help them overcome. If we recognize their efforts, we're likely to get even greater results anyway. Because, and here's the quote from Mary Kay Ash I referenced earlier, everyone wants to be appreciated. So if you appreciate someone, don't keep it a secret. It's as simple as that. And lastly, psychological safety. Google did some research a couple of years ago, and the #1 factor for successful teams was that team members feel safe to take risks and to be vulnerable in front of each other. They feel confident that no one on the team will embarrass them or punish anyone for admitting a mistake, and for asking a question or offering a new idea. These are the things we need to build. We need to provide our employees a clear line of value. People want to know, how do they contribute to the organization? How are they contributing to a customer, that's an internal customer or an external customer? They want flexibility in getting work done. They also want understanding and empathy, that life is not solely about work. I recall my first job out of college was at Texas Instruments in Dallas. I'd been there about 5 or 6 months, and I went to my boss. I was in my early 20s. Said, "Hey, boss, I'm gonna be out of the office from like 10 o'clock to noon on Thursday. I have a dental appointment." My boss looked at me and he leaned into me and he said, "What? Your dentist doesn't work on Saturdays?" I mean, it was like totally, almost like illegal to take a couple hours off for a dental appointment in the 1980s. I see Andrea say, yeah. Well, it's not like that anymore, guys. We can't lead like that. And people need some flexibility, as long as they get their work done. They want trust and transparencies. Leaders don't always have all the answers. And they want a culture of gratitude, appreciation, and recognition. And a workplace environment, a place where they can thrive, collaborate, be psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and physically well. All of these are what I call a humane leader or humane leadership. In humane leadership, the attributes are emotional intelligence, agility, handling ambiguity and uncertainty, adaptability, resilience, and all that combined. If you combine that into your mixer and put that into your leadership DNA, you'll have higher engaged team members, increased productivity, higher workforce retention, empowered individuals and teams, and reduced employee attrition, presenteeism, and sick days. All that's explained in more detail in my book, Human Leadership. As Ken mentioned, it received the gold medal from the Nonfiction Authors Association. It's available on Amazon in print, Kindle, and audiobook. But for you, it's free. For you, you're going to get a free PDF of it. Haley's going to send you, after today's webinar, a copy of the book. So you can read it on your Kindle or e-readers or on your computer. But if you don't mind helping a struggling author out, feel free to also buy a copy on Amazon. Here's my contact details. Again, they'll be in the PDF, the slides that you get. If you ever want to talk about this in detail, feel free to the calendar. That's my calendar. Go there, book yourself a 30-minute meeting. I'm happy to talk with you at any time. You can find time on my calendar in yours. So with that, I just want to say thank you and turn it back to Ken.
Good deal. Thank you, Stephen. I should have mentioned it at the outset, and I apologize for not having done so, but we could have put questions in the chat or whatever. But before we go on to the next segment, let me pause and see, does anyone have any questions, comments, anything you want to share with Stephen or with each other?
I have a comment. I work at a company and we've been working toward, I come from that model of 80s and 90s, and I've been in this position for a while. But we are working toward what I would like to say is humane leadership, the wellness of an employee, caring about the whole person, work-life integration instead of balance and everything. And I find that one of the most difficult challenges is really continuing to have, we know it works, but the progress to change is very slow. We definitely take a step backwards sometimes before we move forward. And I find that some of our difficulty is getting staff to completely understand that this is where we want to go. We want to go forward. And I guess my question is, in a roundabout way, what's the feeling? I mean, we have 54 employees and we struggle to always find that balance between, listen, we got to get a product out the door and we really care about the employee. What's our insight to that?
Openness, authenticity, explaining, look, there are going to be peak times. If you're a toy manufacturer, your peak period was probably May, June, and July, getting things into the distribution channel so that they're in the store, the Targets and Walmarts of the world by November. So it really depends on the season and nature of your business, if there is any, or new customer orders. But just take time, drill it down. These are these are not things that the CEO level or the senior vice president level should be driving necessarily. They should be supporting. Every team leader should be supporting this and finding that flexibility, giving people time off, comp time if necessary. Understanding. I used to run a sales team, Cindy, and I had a young lady come in one day, and she was obviously very upset, and called her in and said, what's happening? And she, we were a group of 15, so I knew what was happening in her life. And she said she broke up with a boyfriend. She's all upset. I said, listen, I want you to go down to the branch today and spend the rest of the day in the branch. And I winked at her, and she says, what do you mean? I said, go to the branch. And she understood what I meant. The branch was next to a shopping center. I was basically saying, take the afternoon off, go, because you're not going to sell. You can't sell something when you're emotionally distraught. So take the afternoon off. I told her, I didn't go to my boss. I just made that decision myself. So empowering your managers to make those kind of decisions. And, as long as you trust your managers, then, well, you don't give everybody the day off sort of thing, or, you do have jobs to do. But that flexibility, that agility in a leader to make those decisions, understand what's impacting a person's personal life is going to impact their professional life. But we can talk more offline, Cindy. I mean, I think we're in a bit of a time constraint here, and I don't want to shortchange Ken. He's got some really important stuff to share with you as well. But feel free to talk to me. I'm happy to talk with you offline.
Thank you.
Good enough. Anybody else? We have some wiggle room on time. Don't be hesitant because of time. Yes, no,
Yeah,
maybe.
okay. I'll add one more comment then, Ken, if we're not in
Yeah.
time pressure. Cindy, the other thing is, and for everyone else, remember that frequency is the most important aspect of communication. So often as leaders in organization, we'll send something out. Here's our program, and we publicize it and send it out and have the town hall meeting about it and everything. And we don't keep reinforcing that message, and people don't necessarily absorb it 100% with the 1-time or 2-time exposure. So keep frequency in mind when you're communicating these employee wellness programs.
Thank you. I also find when I mentor with our other leaders that communication, both of how we're feeling as team leaders and in interaction with the employee of how they're feeling. And if we have that conversation with all of us in the same room, it's about open communication. We found a lot of success with that because sometimes we don't really realize how someone is feeling and we feel a different way. And so I'm really big on let's communicate. If we're thinking it, we should be talking about it. That's kind of something I say all the time.
And one of the problems we face is that too much communication in the workforce is by email or team chats, and email is efficient, but it is not effective.
I agree.
And personal, picking up the phone and talk to one another. If you can't meet them personally, talk to them on something like this is more critical. So,
yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Good deal. Okay. I'll start my material, but people can feel free to interrupt if they want to put something in the chat. I'm comfortable either way. So keep it informal. And let me share my screen. Make sure I get the right one. And can you all see it? Yes, no, maybe?
We can see it. Looks like it's kind of your view of it. It shows the next slide, but
Nope, that's not what you're supposed to see. How about now?
got nothing right now. Click the
Okay. Had a little trouble earlier too. Let me try this one more time. And what about now?
perfect.
Good deal. So you're not seeing my preview.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that transition. So, Stephen, I think did a great job of setting, I'm going to call it an intellectual perspective on how we manage people more effectively. And what I want to do is I want to take some of the concepts that Stephen has laid out and apply them very particularly to the performance management process. So we're going to go from big picture down to something more pragmatic. So with that, I will get into the slides. I do want to share that the presentation's designed to provide practical insights and actionable strategies for effective performance management, but it's not intended as a deep dive. Every individual slide in this deck, and it's a relatively short deck, could be a separate webinar all by itself. And as Stephen said, I'm happy to go offline with anyone who wants to have follow-up, but what the intent here is to take you through some important concepts that you may or may not have considered previously as you're thinking about performance management. Okay, so let me start with the definition, and I presume you can still see the slide. Yes?
Yes.
I was trying to find my button. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, someone. So let me start with the definition. Let's start by defining what it is and what it truly means and Stephen alluded to this also, in a VUCA world. And if you're not familiar with the VUCA acronym, it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And if we're not in a VUCA environment, I don't know what we're in. And I know that it's showing up in your workplaces because every client I talk to, it's showing up in their workplaces. Perhaps the single most important point I want to make in this part of the webinar is to reinforce something that Stephen said, and that is that we're talking about a mind shift in performance management. And mind shift is to take it from a once-a-year exercise and turn it into an ongoing process, not a singular annual event. That shift in perspective, that shift in mindset is critical for the effectiveness of everything else I'm going to talk about. It involves a continuous cycle of identifying, measuring, and developing employee performance. It's not about evaluation, although that's part of it, but it's primarily about growth. Therefore, one of our key objectives as we think about how to manage performance in a contemporary volatile environment is to align individual contributions with company objectives. When employees understand how their work contributes to the bigger picture and how they fit in, they're much more engaged and productive. So, how do we make this all happen? Good grief, I went one slide too far, sorry. So why should we bother with all this? Because all of you are busy, your employees are busy, you're under pressure all the time, and why should I make this a priority? The benefits are substantial and directly impact the organization's health and success. Firstly, it connects employees' performance to organizational strategy. This ensures that everyone is pulling in the same direction towards common goals. Effective performance management drives productivity and accountability. And I don't know how many of you feel this, but I see it all the time that accountability is a real problem in many organizations. It's not that people are pointing fingers at each other, although that sometimes is the case, but the lack of accountability can be crippling to an organization. And good, effective performance management will really address accountability. When expectations are clear, feedback is consistent, employees are more likely to meet or even exceed their goals. It significantly enhances engagement, morale, retention. Employees who feel valued, supported, and see a path for growth are much more likely to stay with the organization. Effective performance management provides valuable data for promotions, pay decisions, developments. This data-driven approach ensures fairness and objectivity in talent management. And ultimately, my experience is that it reduces turnover and disengagement costs, which can be substantial for any organization. Now, setting goals is a cornerstone activity for effective performance management. If you have not previously been disciplined about your approach to managing performance, I advocate for the SMART approach, and I'll get into that in a moment, to ensure that goals are clear, achievable, and impactful. It's simple and easy to understand. There are many ways to set goals. I like using SMART because it is easy and it's really powerful when you haven't had a previously structured approach to performance management. So specifically getting into it, specific is the first measure for the S. Goals should be clear, well-defined, avoid vague statements. As an example, instead of saying improve sales, you could say aim to increase sales of product X by 15%. That's a specific example. Measurable. You need to be able to track progress with clear data and clear milestones. How do you know otherwise if a goal has been achieved? Achievable. Goals should be challenging but realistic. Setting unattainable goals are most often demotivating. Relevant. Goals must be directly tied to the organization's objectives and the employee's role. And I want to restate that, both to the company's objectives and the individual's role. If you don't have that connection, it'll be less effective. Simply, is the goal important to the business? And time-bound. Every goal needs a deadline or a time frame to create a sense of urgency and focus. As I said, there are various other approaches to goal setting, but this could be a topic of an entirely separate webinar by itself. Any questions at this point? I can't see you, so just speak up.
I'm good so far.
No questions here either.
I'll keep going. So, regular one-on-ones, and frankly, this is a passion point for me. I'm a passionate believer in the importance of one-on-ones as a communication vehicle. If you're going to focus on having effective performance management, regular one-on-one meetings are of paramount importance. They're not just casual chats, they're structured opportunities for connection and development. They create consistent communication and build trust. There's that trust word again that Stephen talked about between managers and employees. This open dialogue is critical for a healthy working relationship. And Cindy alluded to the importance of that in her organization. We hear a lot lately about psychological safety. Stephen touched on it also. One easy way to create that psychological safety is through these regular conversations between employees and their managers. It builds that trust. Regular one-on-ones help surface challenges before they escalate. It's much easier to fix a problem in the early stages than it is when it's blown up. And you can prevent them from becoming those major problems. They provide continuous coaching and recognition. Managers can offer guidance, support, and acknowledge achievements in real time. Again, I reflect back to Stephen's remarks about the importance of recognizing contributions and effort along the way, particularly in longer-term projects. The meetings help keep employees aligned with the evolving priorities. I'm sure that most of your businesses, you may have a business plan at the beginning of the year, and 90% of the time it changes, sometimes as soon as you announce it. The world keeps changing, so we have to be flexible and adaptable. In a fast-paced priority, those priorities are shifts, and one-on-ones make sure that everyone's on the same page. Most importantly, they show employees that managers care about their success, fostering that sense of value and commitment. I want to speak for a few minutes about preparing and writing performance reviews. Again, this is intended to be kind of a survey of the important things to address in performance management. When it comes to formal performance reviews, thorough preparation is key. Gather input from multiple sources. Now, I'm not suggesting you do a 360 on everyone. 360s are useful in particular circumstances. Not a big fan of 360 for performance reviews, and happy to talk about that if anyone wants to. But I do think it's important to gather input from multiple sources, from peers, from clients, from other managers with whom the employee may interact. Document those accomplishments and challenges with evidence. Specific examples and data make your feedback credible and actionable. Avoid generalizations. Generalizations they're just not helpful. We also need to balance recognition with constructive feedback. Again, I'm not suggesting the old feedback sandwich, but there needs to be balance in delivering your feedback. A good review will highlight strengths and areas for development, and both are essential for growth. Write clearly, avoid the jargon and the bias. Make sure your language is simple and easy to understand and free from any personal biases. And we all have some biases, but it's important to be aware of those as you're preparing reviews. Keep the tone professional and supportive, even when delivering difficult feedback. Excuse me. The overall tone should be encouraging, but focused on improvement. I have some great resources on how to prepare for one-on-ones. If anybody wants to reach out separately, I'm happy to share them. So let's talk about difficult feedback. It's one of the most challenging aspects of any management job, but it's essential both for employee development and managerial success. You want to be timely, address issues as soon as they arise. If you wait a few months to talk to one of your employees about a less than satisfactory situation, that conversation is going to be less impactful and frankly could lead to resentment. You want to remain objective. Focus on specific behaviors and their impact, not on the personality or assumptions. Big fan of the SBI model, situation, behavior, impact. This structured approach helps keep the conversation focused and factual. Situation, describe the specific context or event. For example, during the meeting on Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. Behavior, describe the observable action. You interrupted Sarah several times. Impact, explain the consequences of the behavior. This made it difficult for Sarah to be present, to present her ideas, and for the team to follow the discussion. So what happened? What was the impact? Excuse me. What happened? What described the behavior and what the impact was? I also like to add a fourth element, which is what do I want to see different? So here's what happened. Here was the impact. Here's what I want you to do differently. Be direct and empathetic. Don't sugarcoat the message, but deliver it with understanding and a genuine desire to help. And lastly, you want to provide support and next steps for improvement. Offer resources, training, or a plan of action to help the employee address the feedback. So getting to the close here, some do's and don'ts of performance management that I think are time-tested. So do be consistent and fair, provide specific, actionable feedback, and employees need to know exactly what to improve and how to do it. You want to recognize both small and big wins, acknowledge progress. Again, Stephen addressed this. No matter how small, it boosts morale. Just a quick attaboy or attagirl at an appropriate moment can have a profound impact. Document your performance conversations. This provides a record and ensures consistency. I'm sure many of you heard the phrase, if it isn't written down, it didn't happen. It's largely true. And be consistent and fair. Some don'ts. Don't treat performance management as a one-way street. It's a excuse me, it's a dialogue, not a monologue. Don't compare employees unfairly. Each individual's performance should be assessed against their own goals and your expectations of those goals. Don't generalize with always or never. These words are rarely accurate and can be inflammatory. Stick to the specific instances. And don't delay addressing poor performance. Procrastination only makes the problem worse. So in conclusion, let me reiterate some of the core principles for effective performance management. Performance management should be a continuous cycle, not an event. It's an ongoing journey of growth and development. Clear goals and regular feedback translates to employee success. These two elements are fundamental to high-performing teams. Effective performance practices strengthen culture and results. They create a positive work environment and drive business outcomes. And managers are coaches and partners, not just evaluators. Their role is to guide, support, and empower employees to reach their full potential. And like Stephen, I'll be sharing these slides. And also, I recently published a modest little book on performance management, which we're also going to give you a PDF of. So happy to turn it over to questions, discussion, comments. Have at it.
Ken, I have a question. So we here at Bishop's, we're moving from annual performance reviews, and into the coming year, we're going to move toward ongoing. We do ongoing, or I should say, I do with the team leaders, ongoing performance, redirection. We do a lot of positive reinforcement, stuff like that. There's a lot of talking goes on in this office. But I was a little thrown back by the written. So I make what I call file notes when we have a meeting. I just have these informal notes that I write down. I let the employee know and the manager that we're making notes in the file so we can document, issues and forward results, et cetera, et cetera. Are you saying there should be a more formal like, are we talking a quarterly form? I know it's an ongoing thing and some employees will need more. I'm just a little confused as to where it all comes into a company.
Yep. No, and thank you, Cindy. Thanks for the opportunity to clarify. So your meeting notes are fine. I think the point is that particularly if there's a problem, or particularly if there's a great outcome, you want to make sure you capture that so that you can refer to it later. Because I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, even as you move to a continuous feedback process, you still have some kind of annual review.
Yeah, actually what we have found when employees usually around this time of year ask when they're going to have a review. And what they're really asking is, when am I getting a raise?
Correct.
And what we have discussed over time is it's not really fair to say, and we started this a while ago, not really fair to say to employees, we're not giving you a raise because of this. It's better to address the issues as they come along and communicate where we want them to be and why we want to be there and the things that they're doing right, so that when we do get to the annual increase that everyone looks for and should get, we have a basis already. Nobody's surprised, or they can be excited about it, etc. It's just trying to get the employee, we want them to understand in our communication with them that this is an ongoing forward development of both company and employee, basically.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing is great. I think it is important to keep those meeting notes. The only thing I would add is that if you have a situation where someone is not performing the way you expect, not only keeping the meeting notes, but perhaps sending an email to them after a one-on-one saying, just want to confirm what we discussed and what our expectations are going forward. That can be a helpful tool in those more difficult situations.
Right. I actually do
Stephen,
write up when
please.
we have that because some of our staff is not, we're an auto industry and so we don't have them at a desk job, but I do write up the notes or at least the issue and what we believe should be the solution or what needs to be done. I do write that up and give them a copy of it so they know. And they have a place where I can add in real time if they want to change anything, but mostly they understand. I find one of the biggest things is about communication and making sure everybody understands. I just told an employee today, if we're thinking about it as team leaders, if we're having a conversation and thinking about it, we need to have a conversation with the employees so they are aware that we're thinking about it and what we'd like to see.
Absolutely. I know, Stephen, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, Ken, you said something almost subtly that I really think should be highlighted when you mentioned including in those notes successes, and you mentioned high successes. I would encourage, this is a mindset change. How about little successes? How about,
Yep.
because at the end of the year, you can go through that file and look at that. I mean, I would love to see people say, put a note in the file that says, Haley showed great compassion to Sarah when Sarah was distraught, or, Haley pitched in on a certain thing, because you're going to forget, particularly it's early in the year. If you're doing this fourth quarter, which is typical formal performance review, you're going to forget this under the pressure of the fourth quarter that everyone's under. So keep positive notes in there. Catch people doing good things, not just bad things, and notating it. So very subtle thing you mentioned, Ken, but I just want to highlight it a bit more.
And I'll add an amen to that.
No,
it's a
add
very
to
good
that.
point.
Too, like just when you're doing those annual performance reviews, which there may still be a place even in addition to these regular, more frequent touch bases, but you really avoid that recency bias when you're doing those because it's so easy for us to remember the most recent thing or the thing that took most of our time. I know when I'm working with a lot of leaders, they focus on these things that may have been huge detractors of time, and they forget all those other things. So I was going to say to Cindy, in addition, we do a lot of documentation. I think just that's the world we're in today, whether it's follow-up via email, we use Paylocity. We have a whole performance management tool in there where we can journal our conversations. So some people can able Google Sheet. It's got to work for your business. But I think highlighting those positive and negative or opportunities, not even negative, right, will really help build that file. So that end of year performance, more formal review, if you're still doing those, isn't as, cumbersome as far as work. You have all your notes, you can pull them all together and really avoid those biases.
Sarah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. And, I also wanted to spend just another moment on the one-on-ones. Don't think you have to have a one-on-one with every employee every week. That it's just not necessary. What I like to do, I hope some of you are familiar with the concept of situational leadership, where you adapt your style to different circumstances. I think that concept can apply to one-on-ones. If you have a high-performing employee who's mature in his or her role, they know what they're doing, you want to get out of their way and maybe have a one-on-one with that person maybe once a month or every 6 weeks. And as managers, we have to make decisions about where we invest our energy. And you may need to have the high-performing employee conversation more infrequently so that you have the capacity to help someone else be more successful than they're capable of today. So use judgment. You don't have to have the same frequency with every employee on one-on-ones, but having the one-on-ones, I don't know how to emphasize it enough. I just think it's so critical.
And Ken, you're absolutely right. One of the purposes of the one-on-one is to help the employee become more successful. I mean, so often the one-on-ones are a one-way reporting to the manager. Here's what I've accomplished, or the manager asking a question, where are we? What's the status? Are we on budget? Are we on time? Where's the project? And the benefits the manager. A mindset change is your one-on-one should benefit both the manager and the employee. And so asking questions, what are your hurdles? What are your obstacles? What can I do? What can I move out of your way? Who can I talk to? Whose butt can I kick to help you out? Which department are you waiting information from? Let me talk to their manager. Those kind of things. You want to make the employee successful? You're successful.
We
exactly.
We just brought some software through Lattice, it's called, and it's one-on-ones, and it's the employee and the manager can add notes to it in real time. And they just started doing them. Of course, there's those managers that are doing them and those that are still waiting to try it, but it definitely helps them collaborate with the employees a lot better.
No,
Yeah.
and thank you, Mary. It's I'm seeing that a lot of the newer performance management technology is much more flexible in terms of capturing notes from one-on-ones. You know, it's no longer just here, fill out the form and it'll go up the approval chain. They're becoming much more interactive tools. So thanks for sharing that. Anybody else have anything? Questions, concerns, comments? You want more, you want less? Andrea, you're smiling. Do you have a thought?
Yeah, well, we also the one-to-ones I think have been very different. We've been doing them for quite some time and really made like touch bases depending on the level of employee and who the direct supervisor is and what position the employee's in. Because as everybody was talking, right, when we had annual reviews, like that was the staff like, oh my God, you only want to talk to me once a year and you're going to tell me everything I did wrong this year. So that those touch bases have really opened up where it's made it a lot more comfortable, right, for the employee to talk to their direct supervisor or their supervisor's supervisor and getting the idea of forward looking and what's a potential issue, what do I see as not working, and realizing there is a voice and that they are part of the solution to become more engaged. What we found kind of in our second step of the one-to-ones and the coaching is the skip level meets. So it's really like when your supervisor comes and asks for your input and what's right, what's wrong, what's the obstacle, what's working. I think it really reinforced with the employee that their one-to-one with their supervisor was heard, was impactful, was part of the progression forward, you know, and had impact on the direction of where we were going.
No, that's great. And thank you for sharing. I'm curious, you know, it sounds like you've been successful in moving towards a more continuous performance management process. Are there any secrets or tricks that you can share with others on how you made it work?
It's much easier the higher level you are to implement it and engage it, not just because it's the numbers are less, but there's a different understanding of impact and people are more used to being heard. So even with the one-to-ones with the entry level, the first big thing was taking away that mandatory written notes and having notes and making it a little more informal and a conversation and not being time bound. Like you come in, the manager comes into shift and an employee's there and no other employees are there yet, and you have a casual conversation about what's going on. That's a one-to-one, that's a touchback, that's engagement. So it was a huge change of mindset that it didn't have to be with a notebook and a pen in front of you and, you know, a recording or notes being taken and someone in a chair across from you to be a successful one-to-one and engagement, you know, depending on the position of the employee and where the one-to-one was taking place.
Thank you.
I can agree with that. The only thing that I sometimes finding myself saying to team leaders is make sure the employee knows that you're having a conversation with them. And what I mean by that is just in casually passing through a conversation about an issue or a problem, the employee might not take it as a redirection or a problem. And so I like the, you know, take a few minutes, sit down, make direct eye contact and make sure everyone knows we're having a conversation. The other thing I like is if an employee or a manager is talking to me about issues or a problem or something they'd like to see a solution to, if through discussion with other people, we find that we can't do the solution that the employee would like or whatever, that we have a conversation about why we can't do that and why that doesn't work. You know, we often hear people in one department say, I don't understand why that department doesn't do this. And so instead of them just having that animosity, communication about why we have to do it a certain way, because not everybody understands things that are outside their department. We try to educate everybody on all the departments, but they see their world. And so it's
Yep.
important that if they see a problem, to make sure that you hear them, but they understand why you can't take that solution to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was a huge part of the engagement process, was that closing that loop and getting back to people. Like, you were heard, I didn't know the answer. I brought it up, to my departmental meeting, and here's the logistics about it. We're in human service industry and people servers. So a lot of time it's funding, right? Yes, that idea would be revolutionary, right? It would change the service industry, but it's just not feasible in, the world we live in. So you're right. That was huge to get back to people and close that loop.
Thank you both. Anyone else have any questions or comments they want to share? Okay, well, Haley's going to give us, Haley's going to let us know, everyone who attended. We're going to send out to you the slides and PDFs of our books. And we welcome any follow-up you may have. Stephen suggests you feel free to get on his calendar for a one-on-one. You can do the same thing with me. I'll share that information. But I know we both appreciate your time today and your participation, and hope you found some value in this. Stephen, do you want to add anything?
Two comments. One that I say after every presentation, just encourage, I'm happy to see you all here. You're very experienced individuals, it appears, but you're learning. Always keep learning, because life never stops teaching. So I congratulate you for that. And I wish everyone continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good deal.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Haley, thanks. I'll be in touch with you for all the logistical stuff.
You got it. Thank you all for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.